Hello and welcome to this training session on using the advanced search tool to find specific nodes using classes and attributes. So in the previous video, we saw how to search for specific nodes using the name or aka. But you can also search node by classes. We can start with a simple query such as show me all the individual, and the system will return all the individual it has in its memory. Now, when you search node classes, it is important to understand the concept of inheritance. So, if we go quickly to our ontological editors, here is the ontological model I've developed for this example. As you can see, under entity, we have two child subclasses, company and industry group. So, what does it mean in terms of advanced search? Well, if we go to our query editor and search for entities, which I know I don't have any at the moment in my database, it returns me nothing. However, if I then click this little tick box, effectively I'm telling my system to not only search for the entities, but also for all its subclasses. So in this case, it will return both the companies and the industry groups. And indeed, here they are. So that's the first implication of inheritance. But there's a second aspect to it, and it's to do with the attribute. So here, under entity, I've created one attribute called class. And if we look at it, it is a string attribute that is made up of a few options. Now, that particular attribute, because it's been defined at the top level, at the parent class level, it will apply automatically to all subclasses. So here on the company, you can see all the attributes I've created for the company specifically, but we can also see the class attribute that was created at the parent level. And the same goes for the industry group. So, if we go back to the advanced search, what does it mean? Well, here we'll look for any entities or child classes, and we'll filter those by the class attribute. And here we'll look for all the formal attributes. And here are all the subclasses that match that particular attribute. Because this attribute is set at the class level, that doesn't mean you can't use it when you search specifically for a subclass. So here now we're looking specifically for companies, and as you can see, the class attribute is still available. And now I can say, okay, show me all the companies that have a class formal. And obviously now, instead of returning all the entities with the subclasses, it only returns the companies with the class formal. However, when I select the company as the type in, you can see I've got many more attributes to filter from. And this is because now the system has brought in all the attributes of the company. So effectively, I can filter using those information. So I could say, show me all the companies that have been created after 1950. And here they are. And just like for the search by name, with the search by node classes, you can also create complex queries. So here we can add further filter and has to see all the companies that have been established since 1950 and that have more than 5,000 employees. And that's reduce the amount of company being returned. And we can see that indeed that company was created in 1955 and has got 15,000 employees. So it matches the query. In addition, we can create queries that search for multiple types of classes at once. So here effectively, in addition to looking for companies, we're also looking for specific individual. And while I'm at it, I will also apply some filters. So here, for instance, I can just copy paste that particular block with Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. And as soon as I plug it with the individual, you can see that all the options have changed from date established and numbers of employee to attribute that's specific to the individual. So here, for instance, I can search by date of birth as well as genders. So let's look for all the female individuals that have been born after 1980. And here we are. So with the advanced search tool, you can start creating very, very powerful queries that can search multiple type of classes at once based on different type of filters. Now, up to now, we've looked at a simple attribute. And what I mean by this is that if we look at this node class, for instance, and look at the overview, we can see that the number of employee is a single entry, so is the date established, and so on and so forth. However, I've also created more complex information model for that example. So here, if we look at the revenue information and the servicing, you can see that both are lists of attributes. And effectively, each list has multiple items. So in the revenue information, the item is in effect an object made of multiple attributes. So here we can effectively see the revenue per years, broken down in unit and currency. And for each year, I've filled up the relevant object. For servicing, we've created a list of enum. So effectively, you can add multiple values, such as tags, and all those are based on a list of enum I've defined in the brain. So now, how do we search for this sort of information? So, let's go back to the advanced search. And we'll start with a simple example. So here, I select revenue information, and immediately you see that the little blocks with the value has popped out of its puzzle place. And if I try to put it back, the system doesn't let me. And this is because right now, given that inside of the list there are objects, we need to tell the system on which attribute to filter. So what I do is copy this block and then stick it inside the value search. And here I can define which attribute I want to filter on. So let's say we'll filter on the revenue, and now I can put the value block in there, and we'll say this is equal to 10. And we're also only interested to revenue that were of 10 million. So I also bring the currency filter, the unit filter, sorry, and put that million. So here I'm looking for any company that has at least 1 year 10 million in revenue. So let's search for this. And here we have one result. And if we open the scorecard for this company and go through the revenue, here we see that on the first year he made 10 million revenue. So that's why it was returned. So if we just go back to the advanced search, notice that here the n is put within the search block. Effectively, we're saying for object, it needs to match both value. But we could also move the AND connector outside and search for exactly the same parameters. So effectively here we're looking for a company that has 10 in the revenue and millions in the unit, but they might not be at the same year. And here is the example. This company, the first year, it had 10,000 in revenue and then 2 million. But because of the way we created the query, is effectively looking for a company that has, across the whole list, at least one occurrence of 10 and at least one occurrence of million. And this is why it returned the result we saw. Now, if we go to the example of the list of enum, here when I bring the attribute filter blocks, you see that the value blocks doesn't come out, and we don't need to put the second block inside. And that's because in this case the system will need only one value input to search. Of course, We can add multiple value by clicking the little blue button and add more option. And now effectively I'll be searching for both aviation and retail. But you might also be interested to see a company that has multiple values. So here we say we want to see a company that has either retail and aviation and defense. So it needs to have at least a pair, either defense retail or defense aviation. And when we run that, we get one matching entry, and if we look at the detail, we can see that indeed that particular company service both industries at once. Join us in our next video where we look at how to combine nodes and connections to create very powerful queries.